The restaurant was dimly lit with golden candle light dancing off polished wine glasses. Soft jazz played in the background. A bouquet of red roses sat in the middle of their table. It was their 5th wedding anniversary, and Elena had made a reservation at one of the most expensive restaurants in Atlanta. She wore a navy blue silk dress, simple but elegant. Her eyes sparkled, but there was a quiet tension in her smile. Jordan sat across from her in a tailored gray suit, his phone never far from reach. He raised his glass and cleared his throat. "To my wife," he began, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "the most patient woman in the world. I mean, it takes patience to work a basic nursing job while your husband tries to build an empire." He chuckled, but Elena didn't laugh. A couple at the next table looked over, eyebrows raised. Jordan went on. "She may not bring much to the table financially, but hey, support comes in many forms, right? Even emotional support is something." He smirked and took a sip of his wine. Elena's lips curved into a small smile, but her eyes didn't match. She stared down at the tablecloth for a few seconds. Everything was quiet, only the clink of a fork in the distance. Then she looked up slowly. "I need to use the restroom," she said softly. She picked up her purse, stood gracefully, and walked away. Jordan didn't notice her leave the restaurant. He sat back, proud of his toast, assuming she'd return a few minutes later. The waiter approached with the check. "Here's your bill, sir," he said politely. Jordan barely glanced at it, ready to wave it off, but something caught his eye. The bill had already been paid. At the bottom, in elegant cursive, was a note, "Paid in full. Miss E. Annie." Jordan blinked. That name, it stirred something in his memory. It sounded powerful, familiar, but he couldn't place it. He stared at the note again. Annie. Suddenly the warmth of the wine vanished. He looked around, but Elena was gone. So was the smile from his face. And for the first time that night, Jordan felt cold. Elena was born into a life of power and wealth. Her father, Chief Akinyi, was one of the richest oil magnates in Lagos, Nigeria. Growing up, she had everything: private tutors, luxury cars, and summer homes across Europe. But her life was never truly hers. Her father's world was filled with politics, arranged business marriages, and people who only saw her as a tool to grow their influence. When she turned 23, her father quietly sent her to the United States. He said it was for her safety, but deep down, he knew she needed space to be more than a name. In the US, Elena dropped the Akinyami and used only her middle and last name, Elena Mitchell. She wanted to live without being watched, without being judged by her family's money. She studied nursing because she loved helping people, not because she had to. Her life became quiet, simple, and she liked it that way. That's when she met Jordan. Jordan was sharp, full of energy and ideas. He was working on his first tech startup and talked about changing the world. He didn't have much, but he had big dreams. Elena was drawn to him not because of what he had, but because of who he was. At the time, he made her laugh. He looked at her like she was just a woman, not a billionaire's daughter. That felt good. They married quickly, maybe too quickly. Elena thought she had finally found love that had nothing to do with money. She never told him about her background. She wanted to see if their love could survive on its own. But as the years passed, Jordan changed. He had grown up poor in Detroit. Life had never been kind to him. He often told stories of cold winters, empty fridges, and a father who walked out. One time he opened up about an ex-girlfriend who left him after he lost a job. "Gold digger," he'd said bitterly. From then on, Jordan became obsessed with the idea that women only cared about money. He swore he'd never let a woman outshine him again. Now he was on his third startup. The first two had crashed hard. Still, He told himself success was right around the corner. He spent his days building apps no one downloaded and networking at tech events that led nowhere. Meanwhile, Elena worked long hospital shifts, covering rent and groceries. But Jordan never thanked her. He acted like it was just a phase, like her job was temporary until his big break came. He never asked how her day went. When she came home tired, he'd shrug, "You just took care of patients. Try launching a company from scratch." He'd say he called her job just nursing, never seeing the strength it took to stay kind, steady, and selfless every single day. Elena stayed quiet. She told herself this was marriage, you support each other, you wait through the hard time. But something inside her began to shrink. She missed the woman she used to be, the one who danced barefoot in Lagos, who debated politics with her father, who smiled with her whole face. Now her smiles were small and polite. Her voice was soft, careful. Friends noticed. They whispered things like, "You used to glow, Elena." Her family called less. Her mother once asked, "When are you coming home?" Elena had no answer. She still loved Jordan, or maybe she loved the idea of him, the dreamer, the fighter. But he was no longer that man. He was angry all the time, and underneath that anger was fear, fear of failure, fear of being nothing. What Jordan didn't know was that Elena had money. More than enough to fund all his dreams. But she never told him. She wanted to see if he loved her for her. Each time he insulted her job or hinted that she wasn't ambitious enough, a small part of her broke. Still, she said nothing. She believed that love should be tested. And maybe, just maybe, it was finally time to see what the truth would bring. The phone call came just after midnight. Elena was folding laundry in silence when her cousin's voice broke through the static. "It's Daddy," she said softly. "He's not doing well. The doctors say it's time. You should come now." Elena didn't cry. She just closed her eyes for a moment and nodded, even though no one could see her. She thanked her cousin, hung up the phone, and sat quietly on the bed for a long time. When she told Jordan she needed to fly home to Nigeria, he didn't even look up from his laptop. "What now?" he muttered. "My father's sick. Very sick." "I need to go," she said calmly. Jordan scoffed. "Oh right. The father you never talk about. Sure, go play princess at the palace while I handle the real work here." He shook his head, annoyed. "I'm this close to locking in that angel investor, but sure, disappear now." Elena didn't respond. She simply packed a small suitcase, kissed his cheek, and left. She didn't tell him her father was dying. She didn't tell him this might be the last time she ever saw the man who raised her. And she definitely didn't tell him what kind of home she was returning to. When she landed in Lagos, a black SUV was waiting for her on the tarmac. Inside sat two family guards dressed in fine traditional wear. No words were needed. They drove her straight to the mansion, the same one she grew up in. Staff stood at attention as she walked in. Everything was still the same, marble floors, golden railings, the smell of roses. In the master bedroom, her father lay weak in bed, his skin pale but his eyes still sharp. "My jewel," he whispered as she held his hand. "I do not have much time left." Tears welled in Elena's eyes, but she blinked them away. "I need you to come home now," he said, "to us. To Annie Holdings." She looked down. "I'm married," she said quietly. "I know," he replied. "And I've stayed silent for too long. But listen to me, Elena. You cannot serve two masters." "What are you saying?" she asked, voice trembling. "I've seen the way he treats you, even from afar. It's clear he does not value who you are. But you are an Akini, and the board has voted. You are to take my place." "But, no." His voice was firm now. If you stay in that life, you lose everything here, your seat, your name, your future. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the mango trees, Elena stood on the balcony of her childhood room. She looked out at the estate, men in suits, women in gala staff preparing for what looked like a quiet funeral. She had tried so hard to live small, to love without title, to be someone's partner instead of a prize. But the truth had finally arrived. She wasn't just Elenina Mitchell. She was Elenina Akini. Back in Atlanta, Jordan was at home eating leftover takeout when the envelope arrived. The letter had no return address, but the stamp was foreign, Lagos, Nigeria. He ripped it open carelessly, expecting maybe a credit offer or junk mail. Inside was a single newspaper clipping. His eyes scanned the bold black letters, Akini appointed CEO of West African oil conglomerate. A photograph accompanied it, Elenina dressed in a cream suit, standing at a podium with her chin held high. Jordan froze. The paper slipped from his fingers and fell to the floor. He stared ahead, jaw clenched, stomach twisting. Akini, he whispered, the name from the restaurant bill, the name from the article, his wife's real name. And just like that, the room felt too quiet, too cold, too unfamiliar. For the first time, Jordan realized he didn't know the woman he had married at all. Jordan couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. That name, Akini, was burned into his thoughts. He stared at his phone screen, scrolling through news articles, press releases, and pictures of Elena standing beside men in suits, shaking hands with international leaders. In each photo, she looked confident, powerful, and nothing like the woman he thought he knew. He finally called her. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. Elena, he said, voice shaky. Yes. Her tone was calm, too calm. What is all this? What's going on? Are you really her? I am who I've always been, she replied. You just never asked the right questions. He swallowed. You lied to me. I protected myself, she said, her voice like ice. There's a difference. Jordan tried to soften his tone. Why didn't you tell me? We're married. You wanted a woman who stayed in the shadows. Who made you feel big while she made herself small. I gave you that. But it was never going to last. The line went quiet. Elena. He whispered, I love you. No, she said, you love control. She hung up. Over the next few days, things got worse. His best friend Marcus called him up. Yo man, why didn't you ever tell me your wife was a billionaire? Jordan laughed bitterly. Because I didn't know. Marcus whistled. Damn. People are talking, bro. Everyone's seen that news clip. How the hell did you not know? Jordan couldn't answer. He started noticing how people looked at him differently. Like he was a joke. At a business brunch, his investor Mr. Callahan gave him a tight smile. Mitchell, he said, I did a little research before we finalized the contract. Jordan's chest tightened. Your wife, or should I say the new CEO of Akini Holdings. You never mentioned you were connected to her. I didn't think it was relevant, Jordan said quickly. Well, it's a problem. Investors are pulling out. They think you've been playing games, using her name for clout. I didn't even know, Jordan said, standing up. But it was too late. The deal was dead. His dream startup, gone. A week later, Elenina returned to Atlanta. But she didn't come back quietly. She walked into their shared condo like a stranger. Her heels clicked on the hardwood floor. She wore a fitted black suit, her hair tied back neatly, her diamond earrings sparkled in the light. But her eyes were colder than winter. Jordan stood in the hallway, stunned. You're back. I'm here for my things, she said. Elena, wait. Can we talk? She looked at him, head tilted slightly. Talk? I need to understand. She stepped closer, face calm but firm. Understand what? That you mocked me every time I mentioned wanting more? That you dismissed my work? That you used my silence to build your ego? He shook his head. That's not fair. No, she said quietly. What's not fair is that I paid our rent for 6 months without saying a word because I didn't want to embarrass you. He blinked. You did. You would come home talking about how real men provide, while I was the one covering the bills. Jordan opened his mouth, but no words came. You laughed at my family, she said. Remember that dinner when I told you about my father's village and you said, sounds like peasant stuff? You were joking, right? Except you weren't. Jordan stepped forward, desperate. I didn't know. Exactly, she snapped. You never wanted to know. You were too busy trying to feel important. He tried to reach for her hand, but she stepped back. Elena, please. I made mistakes. I know that. But I love you. I always have. She looked at him. Really looked. And for a brief moment, her expression softened. Then she shook her head. No, Jordan. You loved the version of me that made you feel safe. Quiet. Invisible. Elena? That woman is gone. She turned to leave but paused at the door. You never saw me. You only saw your failures reflected in me. She walked out. Later that night, Jordan sat alone on the couch, staring at their wedding photo. They were laughing in the picture, her head resting on his shoulder. Flashbacks flooded his mind. Elena handing over her last paycheck when they were short on rent, pretending it was a work bonus. Her eyes darkening when he called her family nobodies. The way she looked at their anniversary photo last month, silent, holding back tears while he typed away on his laptop, not even noticing. Now she was gone. And for the first time, Jordan didn't know how to fix it. Because maybe, deep down, he knew he didn't deserve to. The papers arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. Jordan opened the envelope with shaky hands and pulled out the documents, petition for divorce. His heart dropped. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the words like they were in a language he couldn't read. He thought maybe she'd cool down. Maybe she'd come back and they'd talk. But this was real. He tried calling her. No answer. He texted. Nothing. Then he saw a flyer online. A company gala. Akini Holdings annual celebration. Elena was listed as the host. That night, Jordan showed up at the event uninvited. He was drunk, not falling over drunk, but just enough for his emotions to leak through every word, every movement. The security guard at the door hesitated but let him in. He looked like someone important. He acted like he belonged. Inside, the ballroom sparkled with crystal lights and silver decor. People in suits mingled with glasses of champagne, laughing and clinking glasses. Elena stood on stage, flawless in a golden dress, her hair in a regal updo. She was smiling for the cameras. Jordan's heart twisted. He pushed through the crowd until he was standing in the middle of the floor, right in front of her. Voices lowered. People started turning to look. Elelenina, he shouted. She paused. Slowly, she looked down at him. Elelenina, please, he said louder now. Don't do this. People were watching. Phones were coming out. I know I failed you, he said, his voice unsteady. But I loved you, before the money, before all this. Elena didn't move. I didn't care who your father was. I loved you, he continued. Please don't walk away. The room had gone quiet. Elena raised a hand. A man by the stage clicked something on a laptop. A large screen behind her lit up. A video began to play. It was grainy, recorded on a phone. The crowd watched as the screen showed a fancy restaurant table. Candles. Roses. Jordan raising a glass. Then came his voice. "She may not bring much to the table financially," he said, smiling smugly, "but hey, support comes in many forms, right?" Laughter followed. His laughter. You could see Elena sitting across from him in the video, her smile tight, her hands resting in her lap. Gasps spread through the ballroom. Jordan froze. He remembered that night. He hadn't known anyone was recording. The video ended. Elena stepped up to the mic. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with power. "You all thought I was just his quiet wife," she said, scanning the room. The one behind the scenes. The one who smiled and stayed silent. She looked down at Jordan. "But I am more than that. I am Akini. I am Elena. And I remember everything." She stepped back from the mic. Silence hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Jordan stood frozen in the middle of the floor. For once, he had no words. Security gently approached. Elena gave a small nod. They escorted Jordan out quietly, with no struggle. As the doors closed behind him, the music started again. The room came back to life. But inside Jordan, everything had gone still. Elena stood in the courthouse hallway holding the final divorce papers in her hands. The judge's voice still echoed in her ears. Case finalized. She took a deep breath. No tears came. Just a quiet sense of release. It was over. She walked outside, the sun warm on her skin. Life was moving forward now. And so was she. Back at her office, Elena made an announcement. She was launching a new foundation, one for women like her. Smart, successful women who had hidden their wealth to find love, to feel safe, to be seen as more than just their money. The foundation would offer support, education, and legal help for women navigating power, love, and protection. "It's time we stop shrinking ourselves to make others feel tall," she said in the press release. The news spread fast. Within weeks, women from all over the world were reaching out, sharing their stories. A month later, she flew back to Nigeria. The air felt heavy with memory. She hadn't been back since her father's funeral. She wore all white, a soft dress that moved in the breeze. At the cemetery, she knelt beside her father's grave. The stone was clean, the photo on it showing his proud smile. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small framed certificate, her first signed stock share as CEO. "I did it, Daddy," she whispered. "And I didn't let them break me." She laid the certificate beside the stone. The wind picked up gently, almost like a reply. Far away, back in Atlanta, Jordan was living a very different life. The condo was gone. So was the car. His name had been quietly removed from a dozen business pitch decks. No one returned his calls anymore. For the first time in his adult life, he took a job with his hands. He started working in a warehouse, loading boxes, sweeping floors. The kind of job he once mocked. The work was hard, but something about it felt honest. Real. He kept his head down. He listened. He didn't talk about startups or big dreams anymore. Not for now. Twice a week, he went to therapy. At first, he sat in silence. The therapist waited, letting the silence stretch. One day, Jordan finally spoke. "I didn't lose her because she was rich," he said quietly. "I lost her because I was small," his voice cracked. "I needed to feel big, and I made her feel invisible." The therapist nodded. There was still a long road ahead, but at least Jordan was walking it now. With no ego. No excuses. Just a man trying to grow. And somewhere across the ocean, Elenina was building something bigger than any empire. She was building freedom, for herself and for every woman who had ever dimmed her light to make someone else comfortable. She was finally home. In her skin. In her name. In her power. The sun was high as Elena strolled through the bustling Lagos marketplace. The air smelled of roasted corn and spices. Laughter filled the streets. People moved around her, busy with their day. No cameras. No headlines. Just life. She wore a simple dress, sandals, and sunglasses. No guards. No assistants. No one stopped her, and that's how she liked it. She paused at a fruit stand, picking up a ripe mango. The vendor smiled, not recognizing her. She smiled back. Then a small hand tugged at her dress. "Are you the queen from the TV?" a little girl asked, wide-eyed. Elena bent down to her level, her smile gentle. "No, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm just a woman who found herself." The girl grinned and ran back to her mother. Elena stood up, the breeze brushing her face. She took a deep breath. This was peace, not in palaces or boardrooms, but in knowing who she was. Far away in Atlanta, Jordan sat at a small table in a bookstore. A modest crowd lined up in front of him. On the table was a stack of books with his name on them: Too Late to Love Her, How I Lost a Billionaire and Found Myself. He signed copies one by one, quiet and thoughtful. His clothes were simple now. No designer brands. No fake smiles. As he signed the last book, he glanced out the window. A black SUV slowed at the corner. Inside, just for a second, he saw her. Elena. Still elegant. Still calm. She looked straight ahead. Not turning. Not waving. The car kept moving. Jordan stared after it, his heart heavy. But still. He didn't smile. But he didn't cry either. She was gone. And this time, he understood why. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.